At 42 million.
The art world, where paintings change hands for fortunes.
Sold, thank you very much.
But for every known masterpiece, there may be another still waiting to be discovered.
This is it.
International art dealer Philip Mould and I have teamed up to hunt for lost works by great artists. We use old-fashioned detective work and state-of-the-art science to get to the truth.
Science can enable us to see beyond the human eye.
Ta-da!
Oh, wow!
Every case is packed with surprise and intrigue.
Is it, or isn't it a Freud then?
But not every painting is quite what it seems. It's a journey that can end in joy.
This is definitely by Paul de la Roche.
Or bitter disappointment.
I can't cope with this roller coaster. What a nightmare.
In this episode, we're on the trail of two pictures believed to be by one of the world's most sought-after artists, Paul Gauguin.
We could be dealing with something of extraordinary significance. As artworks by this most innovative, if controversial 19th century artist, they should be worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. But the authenticity of both pictures has been thrown into doubt.
They no longer believed it was a Gauguin, almost as sweet and as short as that.
Can we find new evidence to show that these enchanting pictures deserve a second chance?
It's like it's coming into focus. It's a journey that takes us to Brittany and Bilbao and back to the uncertainty and danger of the Second World War.
It makes me shiver. It really does.
At stake, two significant prizes, a rare still life and what may be the very first study for a Gauguin masterpiece, one of the most expensive paintings ever sold.
There are collectors out there who would really want this.
Two chances of redemption, but is either picture the real deal?
I'm really nervous.
London, home to some of the world's greatest art collections. For art detectives on the hunt for a lost masterpiece, there's no better training than getting up close and personal with the greats. And if there were a world ranking of artists, one name would be near the top.
So here is Gauguin.
And when I think of Gauguin, this is exactly what comes to mind.
And Gauguin is one of those artists that gets the blood boiling for collectors and curators across the world.
Gauguin, Tahitian Gauguin from 1896. I shall bring the hammer down at £7,300,000.
Born in Paris in 1848, Paul Gauguin worked as a stockbroker, just painting in his spare time. Yet by the early 1880s, his work was being exhibited alongside the Impressionists. He would eventually abandon his family to pursue the life of a bohemian artist. Self-centered and impulsive, a hedonist who sunk to the depths of depravity. Famed for his bold experimentation with colour, Gauguin is best remembered for his scenes of native life in Tahiti, which he first visited in 1891. He died penniless and disease-ridden in his tropical paradise in 1903.
Even though he struggled for money throughout his artistic career, one of Gauguin's Tahitian paintings, back in 2015, sold for what's thought to be $200 million, making it one of the most expensive paintings ever sold.
And frankly, one can see why.
Demand for Gauguin's work has never been higher, and we've been contacted by two viewers who each think they're in possession of something special.
I mean, I've always wanted a Gauguin, or fake or fortune, but it's always the way. You wait ages for one, and then two come along at the same time.
I'm following up the first of our leads about a possible Gauguin discovery in suburban Manchester. It might be a far cry from Tahiti, but the picture I've received by email has enough promise to brighten the morning of any art dealer. So I've arranged to meet the owner of this tantalising little sketch, NHS nutritionist Steffi Price.
Hello, Steffi. How very nice to meet you. Thank you for having us.
So this is the picture I wanted you to have a look at.
Yeah, it is. This has got impact. I mean, there's a feeling of power here.
It's lovely, isn't it?
On first glance, Steffi's picture appears to be a sketch in pencil and charcoal of a Tahitian woman, perhaps a relic from the artist's time in the Pacific. If it's genuine, that is.
So what's the story here? Where did it come from?
So it came from my grandfather, who was called Alfred Scharf. So he was an art historian and an art dealer as well. He originally came from Germany in the early 30s.
So is this him?
Yes, this is a photo of him, which I love. I think that sums him up.
Steffi's grandfather, Dr. Alfred Scharf, was born in 1900 and worked as a curator in Berlin. When his Jewish origins brought him to the attention of the Nazi regime, he fled to Britain in 1933 with his wife and daughter, where he continued his career as an art historian.
He's every inch the connoisseur, isn't he?
He is, isn't he? Yeah.
And the light falling on both of them like that.
Yeah.
So a bookish connoisseur in the 1940s with a good eye.
Yes.
You might expect a drawing like this, therefore, to have
genuine.
a good chance of being authentic. Yeah.
Yes.
So where, as far as you know, did he get the drawing from?
I don't know. I'm assuming he got it at auction in London. I think that's most likely.
Right, so it says here, written by your grandmother, bought by Dr. Scharf, your grandfather Alfred,
him.
June the 10th, 1948.
Yeah, so that's pretty definite.
That sounds like a sale, doesn't it?
I think so.
So have you tried to authenticate it yourself?
I took this to one of the leading auction houses in London, who were initially very excited about it. But then they showed it to one of their experts who felt it could be a forgery.
Yeah, so when a leading auction house says it's probably a fake and return it to you, that's normally the end of the road. I
know, but I suppose that's why we've approached you, because I'm not convinced that is the truth either.
If we could prove that this was by Gauguin, it would be a serious drawing. There's no doubt about it. There are collectors out there who would really want this. They would fight to own it.
Really?
I can see this being worth up to £200,000.
Oh goodness! Right, it's a lot more than I thought.
But we've got a struggle. If we could prove it, well, what would you do? Would you sell it?
I might do. It'd be nice to be able to pay off the mortgage.
It appears that we could be dealing with something of extraordinary significance, a drawing by Paul Gauguin, one of the towering figures of late 19th century French art. And not only that, but from an extremely pivotal, important moment in his life, 1891, 1892, when he went out to Tahiti to find new inspiration, new artistic ideas.
While he was in Tahiti, Gauguin filled many sketchbooks with drawings. He called these studies of indigenous life his secrets, but they provided the building blocks for his most ambitious oil paintings, such as When Will You Marry?, the portrait of two native women sold privately for over $200 million. If Steffi's simple drawing came from one of these sketchbooks, could it be one of Gauguin's very first preparatory works for this landmark painting?
While Philip takes Steffi's sketch back to London for further research, I'm on my way to Cambridgeshire to follow up our second lead about a possible still life by Paul Gauguin. I've arranged to meet architect James Snell to find out more.
Hello.
Hi, James.
Welcome. Nice to meet you.
Come see your painting.
Well, yes, I hope so.
So here we are, still life, with 6, peaches or oranges? I can't quite tell.
It used to be 6 oranges, but then later on we believed it might have been called 6 peaches.
The bowl behind, this is a table here. I mean, lovely warm colours, aren't they?
Yeah, super.
And now this is intriguing. Au Seigneur Roy, or Roi, as they would say in French. And then, what's this, PG?
PG.
We hope for Paul Gauguin.
We do indeed.
How did this painting come into your family?
It was given to my parents by Dick Rykins, who lived further down the lane than my parents' house. Dick was a close friend of the family, and I have a picture here. You can see Dick Rykins standing in front of the house down the lane that he had just, or was doing up. There he is, there's Dick, there's my mother and my father, and he had inherited from his father, Sir Paul Rykins.
Sir Paul Rykins was a Dutch businessman who in 1930 had presided over the merger of 2 companies to create the multinational giant Unilever. As the founding chairman of the firm, he could afford to shop for the finest art.
Someone like Paul Gauguin, one assumes, would only have bought from the very top, most reputable dealers.
We would have thought so, yes. And there was a sticker on the back.
OK, so what have we got here? Hunk and...
Hunk and Shearjohn, which sold the painting to Sir Paul Gauguin in 1936, I think it was.
Paul Gauguin.
Orange.
Orange. And it's complete as well. Once you'd inherited this picture, what did you do with it?
We took it to a London auction house to see whether they would be able to sell it for us. And indeed, they got very excited and wrote us a letter. And the letter, this is back in 2011, they're explaining that they would want to put it as their centrepiece of their auction for the June auction.
Oh my goodness, I'm writing to confirm that we would be honoured to present Gauguin's Six Pêches, so 6 peaches. It is a beautiful example of the artist's work, and its appearance on the market is likely to be greeted with much enthusiasm. We recommend an auction estimate of £200,000 to £300,000. They loved this painting.
Yes, amazing, isn't it?
So why are we here? What went wrong?
Well, 4 weeks before the auction, got a call telling me that they were pulling it because they no longer believed it was a Gauguin. Almost as sweet and as short as that.
The auction house revealed that they'd consulted with a Gauguin expert, who told them she did not recognise the hand of the artist in James's painting.
And how did you feel about that?
Well, a bit of a blow, especially after initial enthusiasm was so great.
I mean, it's a sucker punch, isn't it?
It is, yes.
When you get a letter like this, where they are falling over themselves to sell your picture, and then they say, oh, sorry.
Yes.
Goodness, this has been a bit of a roller coaster with your picture.
Yes, it has, yes.
Back in London, I've been doing some research into Steffi's sketch of the Tahitian woman, and I've made a perplexing discovery in a book about Gauguin's art.
I've been trying to work out why the auction house wouldn't accept it, and it seems reasonably straightforward. Steffi's drawing appears to be almost exactly replicated in a book published in 1958, 10 years after Steffi's grandfather bought it. It shows the same image, but around it are other drawings, doodles, sketches.
So is Steffi's sketch just a copy of the central figure in the book, as the auction house seemed to be suggesting? Or is it the original image, drawn by Gauguin himself? And if that's the case, what happened to the rest of it?
We've got to explain why it's smaller. Could it be that it's been folded over behind? Could there have been some jiggery-pokery in the past that we might be able to prove?
There are 2 exhibition labels on the back that will need further scrutiny, but I'm eager to get to the sketch itself.
Let's see if I can actually get it out by removing the tape along the edges. Can't really get to grips with the drawing until you take it out from behind its glass. Oh, now that's interesting.
It looks as though it's drawn in something like charcoal or pencil, but a mechanical copy it is not.
But it's also much clearer now that there's a sense of this being part of something larger, something bigger. And actually, when you hold it up to the light, what's also become very evident is that it's had quite a brutal past as well. It's a great big tear mark. It looks as though someone has taken a bite out of it, but then replaced the paper. I think that's pretty clear. This drawing has been cut down. And the reason that the auction house did not accept it is because this drawing is published in a book in 1958. Steffi's grandfather bought it 10 years earlier, and it was a different shape. It was smaller. How do you explain that?
2 pictures attributed to Paul Gauguin, both rejected by auction houses. Can we find any new evidence to show that they deserve a second hearing? It's a tall order. Gauguin's work has frequently been forged, particularly in the years after his death, as his reputation began to grow. We've recruited Professor Anthea Callan, one of the world's leading experts in 19th century French art, to assist with our research. She's been trawling through archives and inventories of Gauguin's work in search of fresh leads. Anthony, we've got our two pictures up here. Can we start by talking about the oil, first of all? What have you found out about that?
There's still life. We do, in fact, have a reproduction of it in the 1964 Catalogue Raisonné.
So the authorised list of Gauguin's works.
The problem for us is that right from the start, this catalogue was considered problematic. There are known to be works that are fake, certainly inauthentic.
There are characteristics about this picture that seem to sort of scream Gauguin, you know, particularly the strong circumference lines to those pieces of fruit. But there are other bits that worry me.
James has had this painting scientifically examined, and he knows that the pigments are from the right period for Gauguin, so that much we do know.
Yeah, and that's what's so reassuring about this painting when you look into it. It bears all the scars and the bruises of its age. It definitely feels old.
What's also really interesting about this work is that it actually has a dedication. Not just a signature, the PG, it also has Au Seigneur Roi.
When I saw that name on James's painting, I did a bit of research, and I thought that was rather encouraging because Seigneur Roi is Louis Roi, who was a friend of Gauguin's, a fellow artist.
Here we have him. This is supposed to be a portrait of Louis Roi by Gauguin from 1889, when they were in fact exhibiting together in a show in Paris. He certainly collected Gauguin paintings, including 6 that he then sold on to the dealer Ambroise Vollard in 1904.
Well, the provenance for the oil painting is pretty strong, actually. If we turn the picture around, have a look at the back, there's a label on there which appears to relate to a sale in 1936, when, as far as James understands it, the painting was sold to none other than the founder of Unilever, Sir Paul Gauguin.
Well, 1936. I think we can take it back even a bit further because we have discovered a sale catalogue of 1930 in Paris where James's painting is reproduced.
That's unquestionably our picture. It's one and the same. And what a gift. I mean, the idea of it being photographed in a sale in 1930, how often does that happen? So that's real progress for our oil painting. Let's look at the sketch. I mean, look at that. Doesn't it have cracking presence?
Isn't it beautiful?
But look at the back.
2 exhibition labels on the back of the picture provide a title for the sketch, Femme accroupie, or Crouching Woman, and a number of tantalising leads.
Paul Gauguin, exhibition of works at the Leicester Galleries, very well-known galleries at the period in Leicester Square in London.
The man who bought this picture was Lord Ivor Churchill, a very wealthy man, cousin of Winston Churchill.
And Steffi says her grandfather bought it from Lord Ivor Churchill.
And what have we here?
Well, look at that. Not one, but appears now 2 exhibitions. Kunsthalle Basel in Switzerland, 1928.
Is it too good to be true?
It is, of course, possible to fake labels, just as it's possible to fake art.
We've got to keep in mind that this drawing was turned down by the auction house. Effectively, they say it's a fake. Do they know something that we don't? Steffi, who got it from her grandfather, says that her grandfather was a dealer. Perhaps he was taken in. The more we find out about him, the closer we might get to an answer.
I want to know if Steffi's grandfather was the kind of man who knew a genuine Gauguin when he saw one, and my research has led us to the Imperial War Museum in London. It's clear that Dr. Alfred Scharf was a highly respected art historian with an impressive track record in discovering lost masterpieces, such as this 15th century Dutch triptych. But the esteem in which Dr. Scharf was held is most strikingly revealed in a sinister wartime document that curator Simon Offord has found for us.
When the Germans were preparing to invade Great Britain, the SS General drew up this list. It's called the Sonderfahndungsliste, which literally means special wanted list. It's a list of 2,820 people that the Nazis wanted taken into custody as soon as the UK was invaded. Now, a lot of people on this list were there because they were famous politicians, so Churchill, Eden, Attlee, Chamberlain, and included authors, writers, poets, people like H.G. Wells and J.B. Priestley.
I can see where this is going now.
And included in this list, on page 191, Dr. Alfred Scharf. His name, date of birth, he's down as an assistant and living in London.
It's horrible. I find it really upsetting, actually. I mean, I had no idea a list like that existed. I mean, it's a hit list, basically, isn't it? I'm quite shocked to see his name there. I had no idea he would have been seen as a threat in that way.
We know Hitler, Himmler, Goering all had huge art collections which were stolen, taken from individuals. Your grandfather's knowledge of the hidden works of art could have proved useful.
It makes me shiver, it really does.
The Nazis did not like the fact that they lost him. They wanted to get him. Alfred Scharf is really a man I can identify with. I mean, he hunted down pictures for a living. He really cared about attribution. And in a curious sort of way, the fact that the Nazis wanted him is a tribute to his status. And I'm beginning to feel this is so much more than just about Gauguin. It's about restoring the reputation of a man who has effectively been accused of buying a fake. This is about Alfred. It's also about Steffi and her family. We want to put the record straight.
While Philip continues his research into Steffi's sketch, I've been digging deeper into the origins of the still life owned by James Snell. When it was listed as a genuine work in the 1964 catalogue of Gauguin's pictures, it was described as being painted in 1889, when Gauguin was in Brittany, a time when he and many others were trying to find their own style.
I've been doing some research, and it's clear, not just from this article, but quite a few others, that paintings from this period that were once thought to be by Gauguin are no longer believed to be so. And the difficulty with authenticating Gauguin is that he, as he developed as an artist, appropriated styles from other artists, the Impressionists in particular, Cézanne he greatly admired, and then the artists that admired Gauguin, in turn, copied him. And so, you know, it's all pretty confused.
I want to find out more about the work Gauguin was doing in the late 1880s, so owner James and I are following in his footsteps to Brittany. Gauguin was drawn to this wild and primitive part of northern France and settled in Pont-Aven in 1886, quickly establishing himself in the town's small colony of artists. It was here that Gauguin developed a more bold and distinctive style, thanks in part to his friendship with fellow artist Émile Bernard. I'm keen to know whether James's painting fits the pattern of Gauguin's work from this period, so we've arranged to meet Lionel Jacques in the Museum of Fine Arts in Quimper.
Lionel, when Gauguin came to Pont-Aven, it was already an established artist colony, but he did meet someone who turned out to be rather important, who was a young artist called Émile Bernard, who was only 18 at the time. Now, how important was he in relation to Gauguin and their influence upon each other?
So, Émile Bernard met Gauguin first time in '86 in Pont-Aven, but the important moment is 2 years later when both painters come back to Pont-Aven. And Émile Bernard will bring a new technique called cloisonnism. It is this way of painting large surfaces of one color surrounded by a dark line.
A bit like stained glass, if you think about it like that.
Exactly.
Blocks of colour.
This technique of cloisonnism, with its bold lines and flat blocks of colour, is much in evidence in the museum, which holds work by many artists who adopted the style. And it seems to be echoed in James's painting.
It is the perspective that has almost troubled me of the painting, because it doesn't look very real.
It is quite flat.
The fruit is flat, and the fruit is set right on the edge of a table, which realistically might not really have been like that, but it's because it made this slightly strange composition, which I think is quite interesting.
James's painting has all the qualities of the cloisonnism style Gauguin adopted in Brittany. But like all new ideas, it was quick to catch on and much imitated. In 1889, when James's picture may have been painted, Gauguin was living in the little seaside hamlet of Le Pouldu. He was here for 17 months, staying with 2 other artists in a cramped hotel. The interior has been recreated for visitors keen to experience the life of a late 19th century artist. And my research into this bohemian group has thrown up some concerns I want to share with James.
James, I wanted to bring you here because I think this is where we can really feel what it was like for Gauguin and his fellow painters when they all got together here in Britain and they were painting and exploring and finding new ideas. And if you think about it, when they were in here, when the weather was inclement like it is today, they would come indoors and paint still lifes.
Yeah, I mean, basically it means that they're going to be something that is very similar in their work if they're painting such the same scene with the same light and indeed cross-fertilisation of ideas.
Exactly, which is why I wanted to show you this. This is a painting by Gauguin, and we've done a little sort of approximation of it with the onions and the apples and the ceramic vessel there. So that's by Gauguin, and that is by De Haan, Mayer De Haan, the Dutch artist who was here and a great friend of Gauguin's.
Of the same...
Of exactly the same.
Yeah,
the bread,
isn't it?
the onions, the apples.
Just painted from a different angle, different...
Very slightly different.
With a number of artists painting the exact same subject in a very similar style, telling them apart can be fraught with difficulty. How can we be sure a picture is by Gauguin and not by one of his followers, such as the painter Charles Laval?
I've been doing a bit of research into the artists who came here and gathered around Gauguin trying to follow in the wake of the master. And some troubling things have emerged. So take an artist called Charles Laval, for example. He ended up travelling with Gauguin to Martinique at one stage. The catalogue raisonné, the authorised list of Gauguin's works that was produced in 1964, 24 of the works in there, which were attributed to Gauguin, have emerged to be by Charles Laval. You've got a chap called Émile Bernard, great admirer of Gauguin's. To his horror, he found out by going to an auction that one of his own works had been passed off as a Gauguin, and someone had stuck a Gauguin signature on the bottom of it. And then there was a number of paintings by his mates here at Le Pouldu and also at Pont-Aven. And then later on, the paintings got thoroughly mixed up. Who these days has heard of Émile Bernard, Charles Laval? Very few people.
Well, compared to Gauguin.
Compared to Gauguin, his name, he's a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's a rather intriguing situation, though, that these fellow artists of Gauguin have ended up producing fakes.
Yeah.
Either because people have later on taken their pictures and put Gauguin on the bottom.
To raise his value.
To raise the value. Or, perhaps, and there are some question marks, only over 1 or 2 of them, that they put Gauguin on there themselves.
Yeah. We shall see.
So this great fraternity of artists may have actually led to something slightly darker.
Yes, I can see that.
Our visit to Brittany might have helped us understand the way James's painting looks, but it's thrown up new doubts about just who painted it.
I am slightly confused, the fact that paintings are, one day they can be authenticated to be by a particular artist, and the next day not. That's what I find most frustrating. I'm still remaining incredibly open-minded about the future of our painting. We haven't allowed ourselves the luxury to think that it could be anything but the painting we have at the moment.
Back in London, I've been doing further research on our other Gauguin contender, Steffi's sketch. One of the labels on the back of the picture shows that it was exhibited and sold in 1931 at the Leicester Galleries in London. Founded in 1902 by Cecil and Wilfrid Phillips, the galleries specialised in French and British art until its closure in 1977. Its archives are still maintained by Cecil's grandson, Christopher, and he's agreed to search for any record of Steffi's sketch in the company's ledgers.
Hi, Christopher. Hi. Have you managed to locate the specific ledger that relates to this period of the Leicester Gallery's activity?
Yes, I found the ledger, and we must see if it corresponds to the labelling.
Gosh, they're wonderful, these books, aren't they? I mean, they're all on computer these days.
Here's the entry.
Okay, this is very clear. It's headed up Paul Gauguin. So this is obviously sales relating to him. There is a list of the purchasers, and casting my eye down, Lord Sandwich bought one, someone called Jameson, someone called Pollock. Here we are, Lord Ivor Churchill. He was busy that day because this left-hand column seems to relate to the pictures he bought. 3 that day, 3 drawings. Here we've got femme accroupie, crouching woman. That would seem to describe exactly our drawing.
It's so reassuring to see the sale of Steffi's sketch recorded in the ledger. And I'm keen to find out where the Leicester Galleries got the picture from.
Can you tell me anything about the context of the sale?
Well, this was from the Durieux collection of Paul Gauguin, and here's the catalogue.
You've just mentioned a name that I think refers to a label on the back of our picture, Durieux.
Well, this is Durieux's collection of Paul Gauguin. He was a personal friend of his.
Christopher has managed to find the original catalogue for the 1931 Gauguin exhibition at the Leicester Galleries, and it contains a fascinating entry for Crouching Woman.
Here it is, number 46, femme accroupie, crouching woman. Study for the picture, Nafia
Fa Ipo Ipo. Those few typewritten words are hugely significant. They declare that Crouching Woman is actually a preparatory work for Nafea Fa Ipo Ipo, the Tahitian title of the Paul Gauguin oil painting, better known as When Will You Marry? One of the most expensive paintings ever sold. This adds an extra layer of intrigue to Steffi's sketch, because art historians have long speculated that the subject of the picture could be a young Tahitian girl called Tehamana, who at just 13 became Gauguin's companion on his first visit to the island in 1891. This kind of sexual exploitation between Westerners and the islanders was grimly all too commonplace at the time.
While Philip is making progress with Steffi's sketch, my concerns about James's oil painting, The Still Life, are mounting. Although scientific tests confirmed the pigments are consistent with a late 19th century work, I'm keen to look deeper. So I've arranged to meet Aviva Burnstock, Head of Conservation at the Courtauld Institute of Art in London.
Hi, Aviva.
Hello, good to see you.
And you.
One of the strongest connections between the picture and Paul Gauguin is the painted inscription to the artist's friend, Au Seigneur Roi. But is it all it seems?
I think you can see quite clearly here that the inscription paint is on the very top surface. You see how brushy it is? It's painted right on the very surface. It's the final application of brownish paint over the top of the final composition. So that's useful to see.
So what does that tell us? Does it tell us it was painted when the picture was created, so when the paint was wet or after it had dried?
Looks like it's after it was dry, but it was definitely the final touch. I can't see any areas where it's blended into the original paint. It's simply put on top. It's quite dilute.
Could the inscription have been put on by someone other than the artist?
It's quite possible.
And it could be not long after it was painted or many, many years after it was painted?
It could.
Under closer scrutiny, Aviva can see that the inscription was applied over cracks in the underlying paint, suggesting that the picture had time to dry and crack before the dedication to Seigneur Roi was applied. So was the inscription merely added by Paul Gauguin long after he'd finished the picture, perhaps as a more personal touch for a gift? Or might it have been added by someone else to make an unknown painting look like a work by Gauguin? To find out, I've asked handwriting expert Adam Brand to compare the PG signature on James's painting with those on Gauguin's recognised works. How do they compare?
So Adam, as you know, we've got some concerns about James's painting Still Life with Oranges. Now what are we seeing here? These are all authentic Gauguins,
yes,
are they?
Yes.
I mean, they all look so different.
Yes, I mean, some of these P's miss the top. They don't even look like P structures. Some have a rising point at the middle of the G and then go down relatively straight. you have other Gs. They're just S shapes, as you see down here.
Yeah.
So there is tremendous variety in the authenticated Paul Gauguin initials.
So taking our particular PG and comparing it to what we know is an authenticated PG on a Gauguin painting, what have you been able to find out?
There is one thing that you look at, which is always what is going on in terms of the stroke. And when you compare the stroke, there is a noticeable difference. This on the left is the P from the question signature. The actual structure stops in the middle. It has a sort of moustache structure. There is no attempt to swing round and make that P formation.
And the fact that this is so jagged around the outlines here, does that suggest a tentativeness?
Yes, you're not getting the fluency. You're getting the stops, the break, the change in pressure. You're getting, obviously, changes in pressure here, but the smoothness is much clearer on this particular letter.
And with a faker, you would expect the signature to be more tentative, wouldn't you? As opposed to sort of dashing it off if you're the actual person.
Yes, absolutely.
OK, what else have you looked at?
Now, if we look at the G element of Paul Gauguin, again, there are quite noticeable differences, because in the authenticated Paul Gauguin, you have this lift at the end coming down to a straight line, not necessarily vertical, but it has a lift, a covering stroke, and that straight quality. With this question painting, instead of lifting, it goes straight in. It seems to curve a bit more than the known Paul Gauguin paintings. And that's why I feel so strongly that this is by a different person to Paul Gauguin.
Even before today, we knew it had problems. And now we have Adam, who's looked at this signature, and he clearly doesn't think the signature is genuine. That on its own is not conclusive evidence, but nonetheless, we are building a picture here of a painting that looks like it's by someone other than Paul Gauguin. And I know James is going to be so disappointed.
Doubts about the authenticity of the still life are mounting up. We've discovered that James's painting first came to light in 1923 in a sale at a famous Parisian auction house, Hôtel Drouot. The trouble is, only a handful of Gauguin works from this sale can still be traced, and they're now considered highly suspicious. Anthea Callan, a world-renowned expert in late 19th century French art, has also been examining the painting in detail. And we've asked James to come to the gallery for a crisis meeting.
Hello.
Hi, James. How are you doing? Nice to see you.
Hello. Hello.
Just to remind you where we've got to. We've had a handwriting analyst look at it who had some doubts about whether or not the signature was genuine, and in particular revealed through scientific analysis that the signature would have been put on this painting after the painting was dry. One thing we did find out in the course of researching this painting and its provenance is we took it back as far as 1923 and a sale of a number of purported Gauguins there. What's troubling is that almost all of them have just disappeared without trace. And the conclusion we've come to is that many of those were dodgy, and some we have found, two in particular, on the walls of prestigious museums, which we think are almost certainly fake.
George.
So when the analysis doesn't quite add up as we would like it, we then often fall upon connoisseurship. That's the eye of someone who has experience and whom we trust. And Anthea is here in this capacity.
Hi, Anthea.
Hi, James. Well, I felt the bowl was really quite convincing, because although it's an irregular shaped bowl, shows Gauguin's interest in Cézanne, which I felt was potentially very positive. But there are other aspects of it which are less convincing. The brushwork is less than characteristic. I think there are weaknesses in the drawing which suggest a hand much more amateurish than that of Gauguin, to be honest. For example, the way that the brushwork here produces this kind of strange wiggle.
The squiggle. It's almost like
Yes.
it's almost like a bit of writing, isn't it?
It is. I mean, there are aspects to it like that, and also the overall composition in the foreground that are really quite weak.
So, Anthea, in your opinion, is it or is it not by Gauguin?
I don't think it's a work by Gauguin, no. I'm very sorry.
Well, we've always known it's an outside chance. I mean,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, that it's from the circle of Gauguin.
Of the period.
Or indeed, maybe even a little bit later.
Although the full truth about James's picture may never be known, it's possible it was painted by one of Gauguin's contemporaries, perhaps as a copy of an original work, with a bogus inscription added later.
We've been very, very realistic about this all the way through, but something we felt compelled to pursue, because you can't have something like that ticking away thinking, why aren't we doing anything about this?
Of course.
You just have to know.
We thought it could be something tremendously important. I mean, if it had been by Gauguin, I don't know if I can bear to do this to you, James. If it had been by Gauguin, Philip, tell us what it might have been worth.
I mean, these are such cruel, unthinkable thoughts, aren't they? If this could be proved to be by Gauguin. We're talking hundreds of thousands, possibly even low millions.
What's its value now, and what should I worry about?
Well, I mean, look, the value is as a decorative picture, but it's a decorative picture with a bit of history. Look, don't be too disappointed. No. It's worth high hundreds on a good day, low thousands.
Right, okay, yeah. It's a massive difference, isn't it?
Enjoy it.
Exactly.
Enjoy it as a part of your family story, coming from your mother and from Dick Rykins, who was a family friend. And we've had a heck of a ride with it.
No, good. Well, thank you very much indeed. I've thoroughly enjoyed the whole process.
Good for you. Well, this is an unhappy first for Fake or Fortune, to have fallen before we get to the final hurdle, before we submit the painting to the recognised world authority, in this case the Wildenstein Institute. But it's pretty clear from all the work that we've done on James's painting and from what Anthea had to say that there is almost no chance, I think, that they would accept it as a genuine work.
I genuinely feel very sad for James. But in the end, you've got to fight the battles that you can win, and I've been there many times myself. And even though initially a lot of the evidence seemed to stack up, gradually, as we looked at it more, it fell apart.
With James's painting out of the running, we're determined to redouble our efforts to prove that Steffi's sketch is a genuine work by Paul Gauguin. I'm taking up the quest to find further information about the provenance. We know from labels on the back that it was exhibited in Switzerland in 1928, when it was listed as being in the ownership of F. Durio, said to be a close friend of Paul Gauguin. Francisco Durio, better known as Paco, grew up in Bilbao in northern Spain and became a respected artist with a flair for ceramics and jewellery. I've come to the city's Museum of Fine Arts, which holds an impressive collection of his work. And I've arranged to meet Dr. Javier González de Durana to find out more about Durio's relationship with Paul Gauguin.
Javier, how well did Durio know Gauguin? Were they close?
They shared a studio room in Paris for many months before Gauguin went to Tahiti for the second trip.
And was Durio a great admirer of Gauguin?
Yes, Gauguin was God to him. Yeah, that's why, as a proof of the friendship between them, that's why Gauguin gave as a gift the incredible amount of pieces that Durio has.
How many artworks did Gauguin give to Durio at that time?
I think 120. Durio never bought a single work by Gauguin. He had no money.
In 1893, Gauguin returned to France after his first visit to Tahiti and resumed work in his Paris studio. By the summer of 1895, though, he was preparing to return to his tropical paradise, and Javier's research reveals that it was at this point that he presented Durio with the sketchbooks from his first trip, perhaps considering them of little value. In the years after Gauguin's death, though, museums and collectors began to realize their true worth.
On the back of our sketch here, there is a label that has the name F. Durio, Paris, 1928, and it appears that it was at an exhibition in Basel.
In Basel, okay.
And I just wondered if you could shed any light on that.
Yes, we have the catalogue of that temporary exhibition in Basel, and if we check the list of pieces, Kauernde Frau, which means crouching woman, this is the drawing you have in your hands.
As provenance trails go, this one is compelling. Gauguin gave the sketchbooks to Paco Durio, who in turn lent them to a museum in Switzerland. But why did Durio end up parting with such a precious gift? The answer may lie in the fact that Durio was given 100,000 francs by the museum as a security deposit for his sketches, to be returned when the exhibition was over. The problem was Durio spent the money, so the museum kept the sketches.
Durio was so poor, he had so many basic needs that he spent all the money.
Oh. So Durio never sold any of Gauguin's works, but because he'd spent this guarantee from the art exhibition in Basel, 100,000 francs, he lost them, effectively.
Yeah,
he lost the lot.
Those pieces, exactly the same ones, were sold in Leicester galleries, recuperate part of the money given to Durio.
How fascinating. So that's a direct link between that label and this label.
There's a close link. Yeah, this happens
because of this.
Because of this.
Although the provenance for Steffi's sketch seems very promising, there is still a crucial question to answer. How could the crouching woman appear in a full page of sketches in a book about Gauguin published in 1958, yet seem to have been cut out of the same page earlier in the 1940s, when Dr. Alfred Scharf bought it? Anthea Callan thinks she's cracked this riddle, so we're joining forces back at the gallery.
I found something really interesting. You remember in relation to what the auction house said about our sketch?
Yes, indeed. They thought it was a fake or a copy.
But what I found is, in an archive in Paris, the original glass plate photograph, which appeared in the book. And here it is. It's from the archive of Drouet, Eugène Drouet in Paris, one of the great art photographers. He died in 1916, so it must date from before 1916.
This is the crucial piece of evidence we need. The photo of the full page from Gauguin's sketchbook that features Crouching Woman wasn't taken in 1958, as the auction house seemed to believe. It was taken at least 42 years earlier, meaning it could have been cut down to a much smaller size long before Steffi's grandfather bought it in the 1940s.
That's transformative. That's what we were looking for. Something that puts Steffi's grandfather off the hook.
And that means that the picture could have been cut down anywhere then, between 1916, when this photographer died, and 1948, when Steffi's grandfather bought it. I mean, that completely changes everything.
So to nail this, we now need to be absolutely sure that this drawing is one and the same as that appears in the book. And I think I have a way of doing that. I want to find out whether Steffi's sketch precisely matches the photo of the original sketchbook page in the 1958 book. So Fiona and I have arranged to visit a studio in Mayfair that specialises in art photography. Anthony Makinson has taken a photo of Steffi's sketch and used imaging software in an attempt to match it exactly with the original photograph. So this is Steffi's drawing. Anthony, have you managed to match it up to the photograph in the book?
Yeah, the image in the book's really, really clear and very good quality.
It's the moment of truth. Will the image of Steffi's sketch exactly match the photo taken before 1916?
Look at that. It's like it's coming into focus.
Matches perfectly.
It does. And look, the lines here, like this marvellous pair of buttocks here, comes right in. It's a perfect alignment. This arm.
Subtle parts of it are all there. Like this little nick coming off this line here.
That's exactly the same. Look at that. I mean, no one would even think of copying that. It's so tiny. What about this here, this tear?
The tear is coming down from here onto the paper. not as visible in the book image, but it does line up exactly.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's an absolute dead ringer, isn't it? I mean, this is as good as a fingerprint. I mean, it looks as though it's just dropped out of the middle of that drawing.
There's no way these are not one and the same.
And given we know that this is a drawing, frankly, it's impossible to conceive of even the most sophisticated forger or artist replicating this with such exactitude. We've almost removed any doubts about Steffi's sketch, but there's one final reservation we need to lay to rest. The fact that it appears to have been cut down in size has always raised suspicion, and I'm keen to find out if any other genuine Gauguin works have been tampered with in this way. Steffi and I have come to Paris to visit the Musée de Cambridgeshire, the city's museum of indigenous art, which also houses a small collection of works by Gauguin, including pages from his Tahiti sketchbooks. So, Steph, I wanted you to particularly see these true drawings. Now, they are by Gauguin. They are 100% authentic.
Oh, wow.
But all of these share something in common. They are sketches done, I think, from life. These are little bits of information that he could then use later on to work into his pictures. But I want you to have a look at this one in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Notice how the figure is placed on the page. Do you see how a bit of her elbow is missing?
Yeah, it looks like it's been trimmed down that side, doesn't it?
And this one here is also just unusually tight, unusually small for a sketchbook.
Yeah, that's almost too much in the corner.
The forensic art historical side of this, I think, is extraordinarily important because we are finding examples of other drawings that are unquestionably by Gauguin that have been trimmed, that have been cut. But the really important aspect of these drawings in relation to yours is who owned them.
Right.
The only person, apart from Gauguin the artist, who owned them, from whom this museum in 1936 acquired them.
In this state?
In this state. These two drawings were owned by the same person who owned yours.
Right, okay.
It's Paco Dorio.
That's brilliant. It's exciting. Great. I love it.
The story of Steffi's sketch appears to be complete. On his first visit to Tahiti, Paul Gauguin picked up his sketchbook and drew a likeness of one of the native girls that had captured his imagination. He gave the sketchbook to his friend, Paco Dorio, who lent it to a museum only to forfeit it to pay off a debt. It was exhibited and offered for sale in London, where it was purchased by Lord Ivor Churchill. And finally, in the late 1940s, it was bought by Dr. Alfred Scharf, Steffi's grandfather. It should be an open and shut case. Behind these metal doors, Steffi, is the Wildenstein Institute, a bastion of the French art world. They have the power to say yes or no on all Gauguins. I'm convinced your drawing is right, but I don't know what they're going to say. We're only going to get one chance at this. If they say no, I'm afraid this drawing is in serious trouble.
I trust what you're saying, and I think we've got the best chance we've ever had, so I want to take the risk. I want to know.
As the committee who rule on Gauguin works are not due to meet until the autumn, they've agreed, especially for us, to review a dossier of evidence about Steffi's sketch and give their expert opinion. Back in London, we're all gathering to hear their verdict.
It's really worth considering what's at stake here. Steffi inherits a drawing by one of the great late 19th, early 20th century artists, or so she thinks, only then to be told that it's a fake, thus pretty well worthless. Now at that point, she could have done anything. Sold it for nothing, given it away. A bit like one of those lottery tickets that might be a winner, but you're told it's the wrong numbers, so you just discard it.
It was so disappointing about James's painting, and everything now rests on Steffi's sketch. If it is genuine, it's likely to be one of the very first sketches that Gauguin did for his masterpiece, When Will You Marry? One of the most expensive paintings ever sold. But I've been disappointed before. So here we are, Steffi. This is the day. Are you feeling a little bit nervous?
I am, yes, to be honest. I'm not surprised.
Well, Steffi, if this can be proved to be a genuine work by Gauguin, for such an important picture, we could be talking 200,000, possibly in excess of that. There is clearly an awful lot riding on this.
The Wildenstein Institute made a special case for you and have sent us a letter, which you've got.
A letter which I hold in my hand.
Right, go on.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Well, it starts. The next committee is still foreseen in the fall. The precise date is still unknown.
Right.
So that's the official committee meeting.
Right.
Of course, by then, the Gauguin committee will gladly make a statement as to the inclusion of this drawing in the catalogue.
Really? Is it? Oh, that's it. That is it. Thank you. Wow.
And they go on to say, on the basis of this documentation and of its manner, we have never dreamt of putting it in doubt for a second.
Oh, how lovely. What a fabulous outcome. Yes, it's thrilling. It was also about my grandfather. I really respected who he was and his judgment, and that was so called into question. And it's so lovely to know that he was right all along.
Well, this totally vindicates his eye.
Wow. That's really something, isn't it?
So now that we know that this is a study for one of his most famous pictures,
Oh, yeah.
and something that a lot of people across the world will be very interested to see and possibly own, what are your plans for it?
I think I will sell it if I can. And, you know, I'll do some good with it.
I'm thrilled for Steffi, and she's such a lovely person. And to think that just a few years ago, that was turned down.
And it's a reminder, isn't it, of the challenges and the risks within the art world, and how sometimes so easily the real thing can get written off.
If you think you have an undiscovered painting or other precious object, contact us at bbc.co.uk/fakeorfortune.